Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we're discussing a recent version of a watch launched in 2005. This is the Sinn U1 from Sinn Specialuren of Frankfurt, Germany. Their dive watch, made of U-boat steel, 44 millimeters in diameter by 14.8 millimeters thick from lug tip to lug tip, 51 millimeters from end link to end link. The total distance across the wrist is 56 millimeters with a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Pop the clasp open. We're going to do exactly that. We're going to throw this watch on the wrist, get a sense of how it fits. My wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference, and you can see the watch sits easily, but we're getting towards the limit of what is possible with a case this large. I believe the smallest wrist that could wear this watch well is going to be 15 centimeters in circumference. But take note, it's not as thick as you might expect. With a cupped case back, it actually nestles down into the wrist and wears like a watch of 13 millimeters thick. It's actually surprisingly flat. You can see as I move further away from the camera, my wrists and my arm are actually quite large. So this is a suitable watch, even if your wrist is similar to my size. Taking a look at the bracelet, you can see it has a conforming end piece to trace the slope down of the lug and the curve of the case, so it's a very integrated look. Removable links are fixed by hex screws, and that's Sinn's solution to the age-old problem of screw-fixed links getting stripped off. It's a lot harder to do with a hex screw. That's why they use them. The watch has a fold-out deployment that you can use over a dive suit. The idea here is that you can extend it over a wetsuit or a dry suit. There are 3 divots inside the clasp, so you can re-anchor the bracelet inside the clasp. Changing the anchoring point just like that means that it's easier to make adjustments on the fly to fit the watch properly to your wrist if you don't happen to have a hex key. Most people do have a strap tool lying around. Thick gauge steel, single fold deploying clasp with a clamshell lock just like that. Taking a quick look at the case, you can see it's made of U-boat steel. What does that mean? It means that the steel, like Rolex 904L, doesn't need to be rinsed after exposure to salt water. U-boats live in the ocean. This watch can live with salt. But there's another advantage here, as the steel is actually 350 Vickers, which is about 100 Vickers harder than conventional 316 or 904L steels. Finally, because this is all media blasted, if you do somehow scratch it, it doesn't need to be reductively polished when it goes back. That means you don't actually lose definition or metal. To fix most marring of media blasted cases, Sinn simply media blasts the case again. It gets blasted with the medium and it creates this frosted, warm finish. And you just simply don't have to remove steel in order to correct the deficiency. The bezel is made of carbon diffused steel that Sinn calls tegament. So it is tegmented steel, which means it's about 1,200 to 1,500 Vickers, which is comparable to ceramic. So understanding that this is the part of the watch most likely to come in contact with hard surfaces, to be bumped, scratched, or concussed, Sinn used their hardest material for that bezel, and that's because they are a German watch brand. I'm sure if this were an Italian watch brand, they would say, well, let's make it of gold because it's beautiful. The Germans are like, well, let's make it of hardened steel because it's vulnerable. And that's exactly what you get. It's also a captive bezel, so the bezel is held on using screws. This means the bezel can't be snapped off by accident the way you could with a Tag, Omega, or Rolex bezel. So you have to physically disassemble it with tools, but as a result, you can't accidentally knock it off for greater durability. Let's do a quick loom shot here. You can see that this bezel and this dial have no shortage of loom, absolutely none. You can use the bezel as a timing instrument. Line it up with the baton-style minute hand. Now you have a count-up 0 to 60-minute timer. Let's hear the bezel detent. Extremely chunky and satisfying. You can see the crown, which is a screw down, is off-center to make this an ambidextrous watch. It won't dig the wrist on a righty or a lefty. The watch is 1,000 meters water resistant, and as you can see, it features a rather thoughtful and somewhat whimsical dial. There's no reason we need to have this shape to each of the indices, but it nicely matches the tip of the hands for the hours, the minutes, and the seconds. So perhaps there is a little bit of an artistry to the design of this watch. The dial base is matte black and anti-reflective. Underneath the case back, which assures you this is seawater resistant and German U-boat steel, we have a Sellita SW200-1 in top condition, which is one down from the top. It is automatic winding with bidirectional action. It has a 38-hour power reserve. It has stop seconds and a quick set date. It beats 8 times per second and pivots on 26 joules, and it is adjusted in-house at Sinn. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details of this Sinn U1 U-boat steel dive watch.